Laura Jensen was not one to crave adventure or attention in and of itself. A reserved, intensely watchful 24-year-old graduate student from Houston, she had always found wildflowers more fascinating than shopping malls, the peaceful silence of a canyon trail more appealing than the din of city nightlife. Her love for the outdoors had been developed at an early age by family visits to nearby nature parks with her dad. Laura was given high marks by her professors by the time she was in her early 20s and was already being recognized as one of the most promising emerging talents in her field of environmental science. Her blog, Desert Flora, maintained a small but devoted readership. There, she shared field notes, plant pictures, and drawings from her solo treks through Texas. She was especially interested in desert habitats, weak ecosystems that lived on the margins. For her, hiking was research as well as therapy, a means to record what was vanishing, and to be completely, utterly alive. It was March 2011 that Laura went to visit Guadalupe Mountains National Park, which was close to the New Mexico border. Spring was only starting to brush the canyon bottoms, and it was just about the right moment for her to view flowering cactus blooms and take early-season shots for her thesis project. She organized a brief solo excursion, hiked the McKittrick Canyon Trail during the day, spent overnight at the authorized campsite, and back again the following afternoon. Having prepared in advance, she left her plans with a friend and informed the park rangers, as was mandatory for overnight backpackers. She carried with her a light pack, a notebook, her camera, and minimal survival equipment. One thing that she didn't take was her phone. Laura tended to leave it in the glove box when she went hiking. As she'd once blogged, "When I'm out here, I want to hear the wind in the trees, not notifications." Early in the morning of March 19th, she left her car at the McKittrick trailhead and headed out. A ranger spotted her ascending the trail near 8 a.m., smiling, alone, and looking utterly confident. The day was fair, the skies were clear, and hiking conditions were excellent. That was the last reported sighting of Laura Jensen. When she did not come back the next day, her friend reported her to the rangers. Her car remained parked in the lot, locked up, her phone and snack pack still inside. Rangers conducted a simple search that afternoon and heightened it during the evening when no sign was discovered. The next few days involved one of the most baffling missing persons cases the park had ever encountered. How was it possible that an experienced, well-equipped hiker could disappear from a well-marked trail on a peaceful day? Why had there been no call for assistance, no sign of trouble? In a national park as large and wild as Guadalupe, anyone can get lost. But Laura wasn't any everyone. She was careful, equipped, and experienced. The mystery of what had occurred that day in the canyon was only just starting. And for her friends, family, and the small network of nature enthusiasts who read her blog, the unexpected quiet from Laura Jensen was as unsettling as it was sad. The McKittrick Canyon Trail makes its way gently through some of the most beautiful country in West Texas. With its high limestone cliffs, creek beds filled with fossils, and secluded stands of maple and pine, it's commonly referred to as one of the prettiest hikes in the state. But despite its prettiness, McKittrick is also remote, still, and, beyond the initial sections, unusually isolating. Laura Jensen was aware of the risks. She had previously commented on the dangers of solo hiking, but also on how much she treasured the seclusion it provided. She had conditioned herself to interpret topographic maps, identify oncoming weather, and read animal tracks. Her Guadalupe journey wasn't her initial foray into the backcountry. It would, however, be her last. From the ranger's log and a handful of photographs dated on her camera, eventually recovered, Laura had walked several miles deep into the canyon by late morning. The photos indicated a serene day, swaths of desert flowers still in bloom, slivers of sun filtering through canyon walls, and a single photo of a lizard balancing on a sun-warmed rock. She appeared relaxed, concentrated, and completely in her element. By early afternoon, she would have been in one of the more isolated parts of the trail, where the trail becomes narrow and forks off toward a dry wash lined with scrub and juniper. It was here that something went awry, investigators think, but nobody knows what. When she failed to check in the following day, rangers acted hastily. Guadalupe is not like some of the busier national parks, rugged, underattended, and cell phone signals non-existent in much of it. Laura's vehicle remained untouched at the trailhead parking area. Her snacks and phone remained within the glove box. She had evidently planned to get away from it all and finish the hike solo. The first day's searching turned up nothing. Dogs tracked her scent to a fork in the trail, near the canyon mouth, but lost it entirely as the trail neared a tight switchback into a rocky canyon. That's when rangers grew concerned. The ground past that point wasn't necessarily hazardous, no precipices, no rocky slide areas, but it was harsh in others. Concealed crevices, caverns, and the potential for rapid disorientation. And yet, if Laura had stumbled or become lost, why hadn't she called for help? Why hadn't the whistle she always wore on her belt been audible? By the third day, a search party had searched almost 5 square miles on foot. Helicopters were called in to search cliff faces. Caves were searched. Volunteers yelled her name into the wind until their throats were sore. But the canyon revealed nothing. Nothing was abandoned. No backpack. No clothes. No journal. Just a silence so perfect, it was almost man-made. And no dropped equipment. Just nothing. Teams of experienced searchers from surrounding counties also came to assist. Rangers coordinated sweeps of side trails, creek beds, and ridges. Thermal imaging cameras searched for body heat at night. Volunteers from the park, some having known Laura personally through her blog, spent hours walking in the desert sun shouting her name. Nothing still. Finally, late in the afternoon on the 5th day, a couple of hikers had chanced upon something unusual. Approximately 1.5 miles from the previous known location where Laura's scent had disappeared, they came across her camera, which had been set down, not dropped or discarded, on a big rock in one of the side canyons. The camera was undamaged. No scratches, no damage whatsoever. The lens cap had been pulled off and placed beside it. The hikers turned it over to park rangers as soon as they could. Within the camera was a half-full memory card. When rangers scrolled through its contents, the images created a serene landscape, wildflowers in bloom, sunlight filtering through canyon walls, close-up shots of bugs and vegetation. But of all the images, it was the last one that asked the most questions. The final photograph was odd. A grainy, tilted shot pointing up, taken perhaps by error or while moving. It depicted the upper portion of Laura's forearm, a thin slice of blue sky, and the peaks of surrounding trees or canyon walls. But the eye was drawn to an unusual motion blur down the side. More or less like the camera had rotated when it took the shot. Was this the point where she fell? Had she been surprised? There was no telling. The boulder where the camera was discovered had a broad, flat top, as if someone had sat or rested there. No footprints surrounded it. No backpack. No notebook. No indication that Laura had lingered there for any length of time. Police speculated that if she had been in trouble, she would have held onto the camera or dropped it indiscriminately. Instead, it seemed to have been put down on purpose. That suggestion, intentional placement, troubled her family and detectives. Why place the camera on the ground and disappear? Where did she go afterward? The canyon in which the camera was discovered contained no marked paths. Nothing but dry brush, scattered rocks, and thin openings. No cliff to tumble off, no open cave mouth. Just endless, open space. The photo didn't offer clarity, only deeper confusion. And in the days that followed, the trail would grow colder. The finding of Laura Jensen's camera unleashed a temporary wave of optimism. Optimism that maybe a clue would be concealed in the photos, something the rescuers had overlooked. But that optimism soon gave way to greater befuddlement. The rock upon which the camera was discovered was not close to any official path. It sat in a shallow side canyon with no signage, no waypoints, and no clear reason to venture that far, unless one had a purpose. Rangers who visited the site were puzzled by how deliberate the placement seemed. The camera had been laid down gently, lens facing outward, lens cap removed and set beside it. It wasn't dropped in haste or knocked out of someone's hand. It seemed as if Laura had meant for someone to discover it. Why, though? Looking over the photographs produced nothing more. Rangers and Laura's family scrutinized all of them. A flowering cactus. A broken rock. A lizard basking on sun-heated rock. The shadows in the photographs verified that they had been snapped midday, consistent with the estimated schedule of her hike. She was doing what she always did, meticulously recording the vegetation and vistas of the trail, taking each photograph as always. But the final photo, it was different. It was blurry and skewed, picked up what appeared to be a slice of sky, Laura's wrist or hand, and the silhouette of a nearby cliff or tree cover. The blurring from motion indicated it was snapped in motion, the camera moving, perhaps falling or swinging from its strap. A few had their eyes that perhaps she had been surprised by something, a snake, the ground shifting suddenly, and snapped the photo on autopilot. Others questioned whether she'd been trying to freeze a fleeting instant. One photo. One blur. One enigma. What baffled the investigators even further was that there were no footprints around the rock. No prints. No indication that someone sat or stood for a long time. Not even snapped twigs. It was as if she had appeared, dropped the camera, and disappeared again. They introduced cadaver dogs once more, but this time searched in the thin canyon where the camera was discovered. The dogs detected nothing. Drones buzzed overhead, searching for heat or motion. They discovered nothing. Laura's family found the camera only raised questions in their minds. Why was it so distant from where she aimed to walk? Did she become lost? Confused? Or was she taken there by something or someone? Even after spending several more days searching the surrounding countryside, no other personal belongings turned up. Her backpack, notebook, emergency whistle, and boots never reappeared. No clothing was tangled in underbrush, no indication of a fall or fight. The canyon, it appeared, had devoured her completely. The investigation would finally taper off. Volunteers would go home. Park rangers would unofficially document the case as unsolved. And Laura's loved ones, with nothing but a camera and a last photo in isolation, would start the long, agonizing wait for answers that never arrived. Still, with no boom of a discovery, the urgency grew, and now the bizarre finding of Laura's camera, and the search still had no additional outcome. The region was again combed, this time with even greater diligence directed down the slim-side canyon where the camera had been discovered. Rangers came back armed with ground-penetrating radar. Volunteers trudged through underbrush and down slopes. Drones buzzed low over rock ledges and cave entrances. The effort was grueling and unending. But nothing else came. Not a single other clue. No backpack. No hiking boots. No clothes caught on branches. No notebook. Not even a smashed water bottle. Search dogs imported from El Paso, which had been trained in wilderness recovery, were able to detect a very weak scent trail in the area where the camera was found. But it vanished abruptly, at a boulder cluster just short of the point where the canyon tightened into an impassable crevice. Nothing was found beyond that. The dogs wandered around, bewildered, and then lost interest. A few of the volunteers thought this indicated Laura had attempted to turn back. Others spoke of bizarre air currents in the region, confusing terrain, or natural formations that would completely conceal a body. But even in the most experienced rangers, the hypothesis that circulated was easier and more sinister. She just vanished. During the next week, the active searchers grew fewer in number. What began as a full-blown rescue operation was slowly becoming a muted recovery effort. By day 10, only a few park officials and Laura's parents were still present on the scene. They were provided with grief counselors. A formal report was written. The family would not lose hope. Laura's mother set foot on the trail herself, painfully, cautiously, attempting to view what her daughter may have viewed. She gazed at the rocks where the camera was discovered. She was here, she stated. And then she was not. But the earth yielded no secrets. No evidence of wildlife. No blood. No struggle. No drop-offs close by steep enough to fall unobserved. And most importantly, no rain or weather-related events that might have carried her away. The conditions had been constant the whole time. It was as if Laura Jensen had merely stepped out of shot. Finally, the Park Service released its final statement: missing, presumed deceased. Last known location, McKittrick Canyon Trail. Cause of disappearance, unknown. The 4 words reverberated in the thoughts of all who had been involved in the endeavor: unknown. In a park where the trails are open and the views are exposed, where one can generally be spotted from as much as several hundred feet, the soundless, struggle-less, sign-less vanishing of Laura was like nothing anyone had ever known. And so, as with the camera that stayed behind, her tail freezes in time, hanging in mid-air on a boulder in the desert, where all around her lay still and lovely and hauntingly silent. Weeks became months, and Laura Jensen's vanishing act ceased to be on the public radar, but never from the hearts of loved ones. For her loved ones and immediate family, there was no closure, no evidence, no trail to chase, only an unending question mark. It was worse than grief. There was nothing. Her blog, Desert Flora, was still up. Fans made their silent comments on her final entry, words of sadness, respect, and exasperation. Some thought she was a victim of nature's capriciousness, a tumble over an unseen precipice, a medical crisis, sunstroke. Others were not so sure. The odd positioning of the camera. No tracks. No explanation. The internet forums started to hum with rumor. Some of the posters opined that Laura must have run into something strange, something outside our reality. Hopes ranged from the supernatural to the ridiculous: portals, time slips, desert ghosts. None of these, of course, could be confirmed. But the very illogic of her vanishing encouraged fantasy. The rangers who worked on the case couldn't get over it. Guadalupe Mountains National Park is full of danger, Steep cliffs, abrupt changes in weather, but nothing in Laura's training, route, or experience accounted for her disappearance. A number of team members returned in the months subsequent to that to search again over the side canyon where the camera was found. One of them, an old tracker, subsequently confessed in an interview, "It's like she walked out of the world." The case was formally closed as unsolved. Each year, on the anniversary of her vanishing, her parents return quietly to McKittrick Canyon. They bring new wildflowers, Laura's favorite, and lay them at the trailhead. They say little during those visits. The desert remains silent. Over time, Laura Jensen's disappearance was among the park's unspoken legends. Rangers would suggest it in hushed tones to inquiring guests who asked about treacherous trails or solitary hiking. Her name was added to the brief, uncomfortable roll call of individuals who disappeared under benign conditions during daylight without a trace. But to her family, she was not a legend. She was a daughter, a sister, a talented young woman with a journal stuffed with field notes, a camera brimming with color, and a life full of promise. And her disappearance is still one of the most puzzling and tragic tales in the long record of Texas's wild country. What became of Laura on that March afternoon in Guadalupe Mountains? Was it a sad accident in harsh country? Or did something more bizarre extend an unseen hand from the desert shadows and snatch her? No one knows. And maybe, that's the most frightening aspect of all.